Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another session of Chatting with Wisdom. For those of you who don't know who I am Rollie Allaire. Gigado Migun Kwe is my spirit name, and I'm your host of Chatting with Wisdom. Chatting with Wisdom is a weekly interview series featuring amazing women. There are different ways that women are amazing, and we're going to celebrate that. So I invite you to join me in my private Facebook group, Mind, Body, Heart, and Soul Connection. And you can also find a similar group on Telegram that I have been using this year to share positivity. So today I would like to welcome, and I should have asked you how to pronounce your name. Is it Ruchika?
It's Ruchika with a ch.
Ruchika, okay, is a life coach, an Access Conscious Bar Facilitator, energy whisperer, and an entrepreneur, a mom to three kids, and crazy about making moments happen. With 15 years experience from diverse careers, she used hand embroidery and coaching to help people discover their true potential. She has always been interested in looking at different aspects of life, relationships, parenting, working, health from a different perspective that is energetically. This isn't any fluffy stuff, metaphysical stuff, simply communication without words, with a look and feel that goes on between babies and adults. She sees herself as a seeker, dreamer, read hit with a million read hit with a million ideas a minute, and a creation monster, read 1,001 things at the same time. One of her superpowers is her deep intuition, with which she facilitates people to unlock their inner magic, the thing you know, those thriving relationships, or whatever it is they are seeking will come true. So welcome. How are you?
Thank you for having me on the show. I am doing well. And as you just said in my bio, handling 1,000 things at a minute, which includes preparing for a flight back home from New Delhi to the Netherlands, where I live, and doing this interview, amongst other things.
Beautiful. So tell me a little bit more about how you got into working specifically with relationships.
Um, I, when I became a life coach, I promised myself that I would actually use the tools and techniques that I teach or facilitate people with in my life. And I realized that the biggest, toughest challenges that we face are usually with those that we love the most. And that kind of inspired me to break this cliche and create that kind of lightness around people that we love, which doesn't really translate into always having that harmony and zen space, because life, like weather, is turbulent at times. And to be at ease with yourself and the people you are having turbulence with is really that stuff of life, which, if you can contain within you, allows you to actually nurture yourself and build that life that you're seeking. So many times it's people that are holding us back with their opinions or their judgments about you, and in return we do kind of get judgmental about them. What would it be like if we could be at ease with their points of view and ours about them? And since, as I was discussing with you, Rolly, this is something we are in 24/7. We are
Mhm.
in the thick of relationships. So this got to me, and when COVID set in, I realized that it was my children kind of suffering at home because schooling wasn't normal. Tomorrow it could be something else. However, it is the ease within you and without you that takes you through. And actually, relationships allow me to cover every aspect of life, and I love that.
So what do you mean by that? So you said that it allows you to be able to connect or access every aspect of life. What do you mean by that?
So let's take an example of your careers at times not spanning out the way you want. It could be a combination of you're not having the right credentials, or you're having stopped midway with your studying, or didn't getting, or excuse me, I'm just stumbling over my words, not getting the right kind of breaks. Everywhere it is somebody connected with you that either created that opportunity or closed a door on your face. If it's, finances that got into your way, what was the reason that your finances got into a poor shape? We can start pointing fingers outwards, and at the end of the day, when we are with ourselves, that finger also has to come back at ourselves. So relationships forms that matrix that includes every aspect of life. Does that kind of give you an idea?
It does. And so now one of the things that so your topic is about thriving in relationships, no matter who you're with. So like oftentimes I hear, but I was abused as a child, um, or that I didn't get a chance to, I grew up on the wrong side of town, or all these different things in terms of being able to build those relationships and developing who we are, and being able to take those steps forward as to like how to be able to move forward. How does that play in terms of thriving within those relationships?
So here's how I would say that the picture is complete. Let's say if it was like you mentioned these two examples, there were certain people that created that traumatic experience of an abuse or a poverty filled childhood or teenage school that did not give you the best of opportunities. So yes, those people were instrumental. However, the picture would be complete when you also included you. Did you stop at the limits that were set for you by these people? Or did that spirit within you outshine the opposing forces that these people were putting around your life, not letting you shine and thrive? Because when we look around us, there are so many examples of people that have made it from rags to riches, that have not allowed abuse to define who they are. So, in your case, if you allowed those situations to stop you, there is no wrongness in that. Perhaps you did not have the tools at that time to overcome that. And if you're seeking truly a way forward so that your light can continue to outshine anything that comes across your path, then I would say that you are thriving. Despite not having succeeded in those moments, you are thriving because you are refusing to give up. And this is something that people so get it wrong, that thriving only equals finally at the success point or a good relationship. No, thriving is every moment of every step of your journey where you're saying, all right, it's not working for me. What else is possible here? You're asking that question and opening door after door.
And I love that answer because it really does make that difference of like, so when you stop is when you're no longer thriving. And but every time that you take that new step, and sometimes I often hear people saying that we take a step back, or that or we're moving forward and then somebody comes over and like yanks us back down again, by making some sort of comment, or and that kind of ties into that relationship. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely, Rolly. So when you have people persistently pulling you back, and at one point it could be a partner, or another time it could be your trust that is betrayed by your dearest friend whom you confided something in, or could be somebody at work who you thought had your back. but instead he or she turned around against you. So if you have these kind of patterns, the first thing that you could do to immediately step into a thriving mode is to ask yourself this question: am I in a pattern where I am surrounded by people, or I keep coming across people that are breaking their trust with me? Just asking that question is a big, big step outside of that zone of feeling victimized or helpless. That no matter what I do, everybody I meet, whom I trust, tends to break my confidence, my trust. That question of what can I do to change this pattern immediately puts you into a thriving mode. And sometimes this question, when it comes out from your heart and soul, that is refusing to believe that this is what life is, has dealt out for you, it, it comes to you in a way that is totally unpredictable. However, it will come to you.
And I love that that you actually point out that it will come to you. Sometimes we go down one path, or we think that this is the way that we need to be going, or and then we kind of run across these stumbling blocks in terms of being able to maintain these relationships and being able um, to create what it is that we're looking for. And so it makes a huge difference when, again, when we stop. So as soon as we stop, that's where we stop moving forward.
Indeed. And let's say you've tried, you've attempted, and every time you take a few paces and then you stop. Is it time for you to look outside the box and attempt something different? And here, as you had shared in my bio, energetics is something that is actually been with us for thousands of years since life started. And this is something which is so elemental yet so underrated or over philosophized, as if to connect to something energetically, one has to have a kind of a connection, belief system, or whatever not. However, to me, treating something or facilitating a client energetically and actually empowering them is so simple, because we are actually doing that. And
Hmm.
that allows you to discover, just like a computer gets programmed over time and has glitches here and there are, because of some programs that we um, tried out and had some viruses in them or thing. I'm just kind of giving an analogy that patterns that are in our lives, or kind of glitches in a computer, are treated with the same concept. What do we have to do to get out of it? So a programmer will run the antivirus and it's gone. As a facilitator, when I work on your energy, I am able to step into your spaces that have these programmings, and they run back sometimes lifetimes. You may have this kind of a pattern, dysfunctional pattern in your relationships, and once you've tried it a couple of times, you have that choice of saying, all right, let me reach out. And it could be a therapist that clicks with you, which is very important. That shift of mind has to begin with you, that I will not stop at the first person because that's how it is done. No, read up, educate yourself, see what really resonates and makes you come alive when you read
Yeah.
about a therapist, and go for it.
and and one of the things is that we actually, as we grow, we get to a point where we become stagnant, regardless of how we do things. If we don't shift and we don't change, we get to where we're actually feeling comfortable. So even if things are better or than they were, then in different relationships or in our life, and then we stop at that particular point. And so then again, we stop thriving. And so it's always about being able to learn new things, always being able to try and take that next step. And life is always going to throw things at us, and we're always going to have different things that are going to feel like they're blockages that stop us from being able to propel forward, isn't it?
Absolutely. I love that. And I would just add that we are dynamic living beings and we are not meant to be in the same state for, our lives. And that's something that stops us because when you are uncomfortable, when you're stepping out of your comfort zone to try something, is when you're actually growing. And to just share a small example, I've been driving for about 15, 20 years, but I always remained close to the city limits, thinking that what if I get lost? What if the car breaks down? So I had to go for an event for my other business to France from Holland, and it's about 500 kilometers. I knew that I could do it. So I asked myself this question: is it time for you to break that boundary that you've set for yourself? And I got this huge yes, go for it. And my heart palpitating at the other split second. So I just prepared myself well and I drove off. Ever since then, it's not just one change that has stepped into my life of being able to drive longer distances. My whole life feels bigger. And that's what you've got to kind of ask yourself and thrive by feeling uncomfortable, yet knowing that that discomfort is you growing in some direction.
Well, and I love that example. So we had I hosted a women's retreat in April, and one of the things is one of the ladies that came, that was exactly one of the things that she said is like, I always go and do all the same things and with the same people. And the retreat came across my my Facebook feed, and it was a resounding yes, I need to do this. So coming in scared, not knowing who she's going to meet, knowing that there's like zero connections because we have zero internet connection or data connection when we go to this particular space. And so like knowing that you're going to be completely isolated from everybody that you know, and having to meet complete strangers and spending 3 days with them. And one of the things that was incredible was that bond that they were actually able to create with the women that were there, and coming away with some new friendships, and but now having a whole new experience that allows her to know that when she takes the plunge, it's not going to be disastrous.
Exactly. Absolutely. And how often do we kind of test ourselves? We usually wait for a challenge to discover our true potential. I would say just challenge yourself without any point of view of what the result will be like. And you really don't have to go out of your way because, like everyone, our lives are full. We really don't have that kind of window to say, all right, let me put everything aside and do that. But it could be just a simple thing as one day maybe looking up on a YouTube video and cooking something different, or just deciding that you'll wake up at 4 o'clock every day for 2 days if you're a late sleeper, or sleeping early when you are just enjoying watching television every day. What would it be like to just kind of go to bed early and disconnect from the media and maybe journal something? You might just sit there with an empty book for half an hour, but even that one word that I didn't know what to write is you thriving because you broke a pattern for that
And I love,
moment.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No, no,
off.
please go ahead. No, no.
There was a delay. And so I was just going to say, I love that. So like when you talked about like, because I often hear people say like, well, I can't journal. Okay, well, just try. The other thing is like using different mediums, right? So I am not an artist by no means, but being able to just take the paintbrush and just whatever it is that comes out. And a lot of times something magical happens and it's like, oh, wow, I created that. And not because I know what it is that I'm doing, but just because I allow myself to be able to take that step. And it just becomes something, it becomes something different. So the next time that I pick it up, it's not, I don't have this full blockage that says, oh, I can't paint. I can. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I can paint and I can create, and different things may show up. So I love that. I love that analogy of like, just take the book and just sit with it.
Yes, and if you really take, let's say, a real-time example of being at work and having a very aggressive colleague who tends to take the limelight every time, even when it's your due to you that some work got done and the acknowledgement is yours, but somehow we always end up being the quiet ones, or being on the back foot. How would you change a situation like that? Or are you at home with a sibling that is so dominating? How do you stand up for yourself? It doesn't have to be a huge step. It could just begin with an intention of, I'd just like to change this. What
Yeah.
would it be like? A question is always something that opens the first door to the change that will come your way. You've started the change by asking for it, and asking in a way, that a question that is not a one which is like, oh, why don't I get to speak up? That why is a kind of a treadmill where you'll keep running on it. You may get to know the answer. Okay, that person is more dominating, or he's more confident. I'm not so confident. I'm an introvert. How does knowing the answer help you, empower you? However, a question of what would it take to change this is one which has the kind of a power. Ask yourself this question right now, both the ways. Why doesn't this happen to me? And what would it take for this to change? And
And
feel
I
the
love
difference.
And I love those two
Yes.
questions, right? And I keep cutting you off. There's a little bit of a delay in between, so I
No.
apologize for cutting you off. And but like I love those two questions, right? So like how, like what first of all, identifying like what's the issue, and then what can I do to be able to make changes. And I know that that's one of the things that I often hear, because I work with a lot of women that have anxiety. And so that fear comes up. So anxiety is really based out of fear. And that anxiety
Yeah.
comes up of like, well, what happens? What happens? And so, well, what would happen if? Right. So then, and going through the scenarios of like, what happens if I actually stood up for myself? What happens if I actually took the credit for something that it was that I did? What would happen if? And sometimes it's retreating, right? So sometimes within that part of things is retreating and not engaging in those battle of wills. And because you use the analogy of having a sibling who's overpowering, so standing there arguing with them isn't going to get you anywhere. So walk away, right?
Yes, absolutely. And always know that by walking away, you're not being a doormat. You're actually creating that space so that you can reflect and keep asking that question of what would it take for this situation to change, so that something, it could be an incident, it could be a trigger, it could be a catalyst, it will be there, and it will be there in a way that allows you, that contributes to you. Because we often forget when we are in this kind of draining, overwhelming patterns with people closest to us, that as if no one has our back, because we expect them to have our back. We expect them to have shown up the way they should have. Instead, when you walk away with that question, you're allowing the universe, the energetics, to get to play and create those situations, have certain people show up, so that your change can manifest in a way that contributes even to the other person. Change ultimately is you becoming aware and the other person as well becoming aware. However, the choice remains theirs. So long as you choose to allow yourself more consciousness, more awareness, you are able to quieten your mind. And that is something I wanted to touch in this conversation with you, Rolly. The mind and the consciousness, the two spaces in us, which should be in harmony with each other, not one at the cost or at battle with each other, but in harmony. When you're conscious, you're in the driving seat of your life, whereas when you are mind driven, it's like an artificial intelligence leading you towards the same kind of a pattern over and over again.
And I love that. So now you, one of the things in your bio is that you actually do, and I always forget what it's called, but I do know what Access Consciousness, is that what it's called?
Yes.
So do you want to
Yes,
tell
that's
a little bit about what it is? I always forget what it's called. I always go to my friend Nicole, who does a great job, and I love the energetics of it, but I always forget what it's called.
right. So, access consciousness is a modality that I trained with and I work with using it with my clients. It literally is self explanative, accessing your consciousness on the go, not later or before a situation. It's like preparing yourself for an exam and being ready for it. No, life is happening by the second, by the minute. So access consciousness has these tools, both physical and energetic, that can be used online, which is how I work with my clients online. So that because energetically, it's again, let me give an analogy here. These days, our smartphones are literally like touch buttons to access the entire world. You could be anywhere. Your WhatsApp list could have 500 people across the globe. You just touch the button and your message has gone everywhere. So pretty much the same way, this consciousness is this, uh, how would you call that, the web space. And when you have the right kind of tools, which I use and give you in the sessions when I work with you, you're able to, you're empowered. That helplessness of not knowing how to deal with the situation is gone, because you can access your consciousness with a thought
Mm-hmm.
and you're there, and you can walk out of a situation thriving no matter who you're with, complete. Like right now, I'm talking to you as I was sharing with you, Rolly, with in India, because both my mother and mother-in-law are critically ill. I'm leaving tomorrow. And I had this battle of, emotions, mind, of whether I should take out the time today or do this interview another time. I was like, no, it was unstoppable, the flow that was coming out of me, because I lived through a roller coaster of emotions. And yes, I broke down. It was traumatic for me, because I lived thousands of kilometers away. However, the awareness, the consciousness of coming together beautifully, a different person, yet complete and thriving, allowing myself the emotions when they come on, yet feeling calm and connected with them, no matter where I am, allows me to thrive in my relationship with them and thrive with myself as I take myself away. And that is how it is meant to be. Nature has created us with minds. However, these minds aren't the prisons for us to live with, of guilt, of judgment, of fear. These are lies that we make real for ourselves. What's actually real is that this life that you've got, you're meant to experience consciousness with it. And relationships are a beautiful way, even if you're having arguments, even if you want to kind of break off with somebody. Every moment has a choice for you to either be conscious and say, all right, if it's a breakup that I'm going to go in for, what is it going to contribute to me? How can I expand my consciousness, my awareness? These are all your real life situations that you can work yourself out of to a huge extent using the tools of access consciousness.
And I love those exact examples that you're talking about, right? So even though you're not necessarily with somebody, you still have that connection with them. And so we have this, and whether that's that they're here on earth or in spirit, is that you have those connections with people. And so and we have connections with each other all over the globe, regardless of whether or not we even know who they are. And so being able to tap into those energetics um, that are universal, that happen, and that we get to make the choices that we need to make for ourselves, knowing that we still have support behind us, regardless of whether or not the people who are in our lives in this particular moment have our back. The universe has our back. The universe knows what it is that we need, and so we just need to trust and listen to what is it that we need, and how are we going to be able to move forward. And using those two questions that you shared make a huge impact as to how we're going to be able to take things to that next level, how we're going to be able to take things to being able to understand where is it that we're coming from and where is it that we're going to go.
Indeed, absolutely. It's always that question that will open up the combination of things that you require. Maybe after a breakup, it's a bit of counseling, it's yoga, it's however, unless you ask that question, you will not be able to bring the best kind of healing for yourself so that you're complete, whole, and moving on and building your life in a different way than you were before. But that why did it have to happen to me is going to lock you into a prison, and ultimately you will be repeating the same pattern, perhaps with someone else, or remaining locked in, feeling as if relationships just aren't for you.
And I like that viewpoint, because I often see people that stay stuck in what it was like with being with their ex partner, or what it was like being in as a child, or what it was like when other traumatic events have happened in their lives, and they stay stuck. And not that those don't have value, and that they're not important, and that they don't give us give us something from it, but it's when we don't take a look at, okay, well, so it's happened, we can't change what it is that's happened, but how can we move through that? How can we actually take things into that next step? And being able to tap into that thriving mode, and allowing us to be able to take things into that next step, allows us to be able to get out from this sticky mud that we're stuck in, and being able to pull ourselves out, and moving ahead and making changes, so that patterns don't necessarily repeat themselves. Because that's one of the things that you've said a few times this morning, is that patterns tend to repeat themselves when we stay stuck, right?
Indeed.
So,
Indeed.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, yes, absolutely. It's just that another point that I'd like to share with the people that are watching in or will listen to this later is that at times, actually, life is going quite well. However, you have that feeling inside that you're not kind of living to your true potential. I mean, everything could be going well for you. It's just that missing, and that missing element is you, or is something you could wake up to by again asking yourself that question: what would it take to thrive? What would it take to have that hugeness, that feeling of living at an expanded level rather than just humming along on the same kind of a train every day? And yeah, so it's not all the time that it has to be trauma, it has to be abuse. It could just also be you missing the element of thriving in your life in a way that you never realized, and you could by asking yourself that question.
And that's beautiful as well, right? So what do we want to be able to do next? And so I often hear people say, okay, well, like it just seems like it's a never ending scale of staircases that I go to. I get to the, I want to be able to get to here. And then I think, okay, I'm finally here and things are going to be finished. And then, but we always need to strive for that next level, that next step, so that we can get to where things are. And so continuing to learn and continuing to connect, right? So making a huge difference as to how we're going to be able to take things into that next level.
Indeed, I would say that have you till today, or how often have you asked this question of yourself of am I thriving in life, in relationships, in my own relationship with me? Um, Try making thriving your popular word and just start feeling its energy before even taking any kind of action or coming to that kind of a reflection of am I or am I not. Just play around with thriving as a word and see what it brings up for you.
Beautiful. So now, as we're getting close to closing off, is there anything else that you thought was really important for people to know before we go into get into how people can work with you?
I would say that your awesome questions brought out so much from me, and I had no idea I would be going down so many lanes. I would just reiterate that every time you feel scared of doing something, ask yourself, what is it that's stopping me? Is this fear even real? And go for it. Go for it, because the world won't fall apart around your feet. And you, even if it does, it's meant to. How else would something else show up? Literally, it's like building a house on top of a house. You can't unless you have the empty space. So that's what I would tell you, and connect with yourself energetically simply by going out, touching the plants, observing nature. That is energetics unrolling before your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I would say that even stereotypes of teenagers are overly rebellious, or 2-year-olds are meant to be loud, boisterous, and with too much energy. Yes, it is exhausting to bring up children, because that's one thing I didn't add in, that children and the dynamics with them are the best way for you to practice energetics with questions, with looks, and you will have that connection with your own consciousness, awareness, energetics as you go along.
And that's beautiful, and I love how you actually put that into play with the different stages of life, right? So those stages of development are very normal, and so, but how do we move through them? How do we actually help them get to that next step? And how do we make them? How do we help them be able to identify what it is that's going on, so that they can continue to thrive, so that they can continue to move forward? So for anybody who's watching that has children, being able to take a different look and using the same question of how can I help them continue to thrive. So I love that. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how that people can work with you and what kind of things that you offer?
Yes, so I'm offering a 10% discount to any of you that are watching and would like to work with me on a particular program that's on my website. I've shared the link here on the private chat, Rollie, because it was not, I
Yeah, I
could not
just
put
put
it
it on.
into the comments. Okay,
Yeah, I
all
just
right.
did.
So,
Yeah.
all right. So just reach out to me also via Facebook. I think my social media is already there. You can via Messenger, email, whatever works for you, and we can link up and set up a one-on-one chat to discuss if you're a good fit, because we are all in different stages of our lives, and when the click is there, then the whole process becomes effortless. It's as important for me as it is for you.
Beautiful. And I love that. So thank you so much for joining us, and wishing your family the best in health and wellness with everything that's going on. and sending you beautiful, positive love and light to you and your family. And thank you so much for taking the time with spending with us, because this, I think, is also really important in terms of being able to have that connection and having those energetics like you actually described. So thank you so much, because I know that there's definitely someone who was watching today that definitely needed to hear these messages. So thanks so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on your show, Rollie.
Thank you.